Hi friends, this is Sarah from Crafting and Relaxing. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. Today we are putting together my July daily, and this is a journal that I'm making from scratch. If you're new here, I don't have a rule about how I make journals. They're all different. This one is graham cracker boxes because I had a spree where I ate a lot of graham crackers. I don't know. I think it had something to do with marshmallows. Don't mind the red, white, and blue cards around us. I just didn't clean up the mess. I just started something else in the middle. If you have cracker boxes, chipboard sitting around from maybe you bought some, packaging and it came with it. Maybe you have a giant cardboard box, anything. You can make a journal cover out of anything. All I'm doing on this is, you don't even need a fancy paper cutter like this, is trying to get these two boxes somewhat square, and so there's no big lumps, bumps. When graham crackers get opened at my house, nobody thinks later, I'm going to make a journal out of this, so I want to be careful with it. So if you have a spot that's torn or damaged, and then because I layer and one goes inside the other, it needs to be trimmed down a little. Then I took my pencil, my apologies, I should have used a pen for you, and marked which one was going to go on the inside and which direction was going to be up. That was based on the fact that one of them was more beat up than the other, and I wanted the structurally sound and smoother one to be on the outside where you would feel it when you picked it up with your hands. Boxes kind of have that lump where the corner bends over, so I'm trimming that off. I am blessed enough to have the paper cutter that doesn't care at all if you cut graham cracker boxes with it. If you don't, think about using a ruler and an X-Acto knife or a box knife, or maybe one of those quilter's rollers, but maybe don't tell the quilter in your life. I don't know. Then I was trying to decide, how am I going to put this together and what's my wait time? I have spray adhesive because my friend moved and gave it to me. But you don't have to have it. You could use double-sided tape. You could use wet glue. There's tons of stuff, if you're a crafter, that you could use. Then I'm still kind of thinking, okay, I'm sure it's this fabric. I'm sure it's these two items. Where do I want to cut or tear it? And I cut it and then tear it because I can't cut it that straight, right? And if you work with fabric, it's easier to tear. Then I'm still thinking about the spray adhesive. So I pulled this journal out. This is a journal that I've yet to list on Etsy, but I think I made it like a year ago and it's holding up well. So we're going to do spray adhesive. At this point, this is just a snip outside. I'm showing you I've put the two layers together. Then I put down a clean, dry piece of blue paper. And this is my box that my drafting chair came in years ago, and I have kept it. Mr. Crafting and Relaxing is annoyed by it in the garage, but it's really, really handy. This is my sometimes in the garage workstation if it's raining, and outside if it's not. Then I'm showing you what's going to happen, right? I'm going to spray that, and then I'm going to lay this down, the fabric down. I didn't have a tripod this day. Mr. Crafting and Relaxing had taken them all, so my apologies. On the spray adhesive, always read the directions, which I'm sure I haven't done before. It says spray both sides. I'm not going to spray fabric. I'm just going to spray the box that I'm using, then let it set for a minute, then put it on there. I also spent some time thinking, should I iron the fabric? No, let's not get crazy. The wrinkles came out fine. You can't even tell. Okay, so just giving you an idea of what we're going to do, then I'll take you back inside. It's not hard. It's a little scary your first couple times. For me, I have a whole bunch more graham cracker boxes, and I actually have enough fabric. I had a fat quarter, so I could make another journal if it went terribly badly. But it's pretty forgiving, and this spray adhesive, you can peel it off again, and I stay outside when I put it all together because you can lift the corners open. Okay, now we're inside, and I'm looking at one of my December dailies and trying to figure out how many pages were in the signatures. I was literally counting. I want this journal to be sloppy at this point when we assemble it. I don't want the signatures to be tight because I want to be able to put a bunch of stuff in. So I'm counting and I'm looking and saying, okay, how many should we have? So I decide we should have 7 pages, 3 in each signature. That's pretty skimpy. then of course I'm just going to find more stuff, more and more stuff. If you've watched me make a journal before, or if you've watched anybody, there's a bunch of shortcuts and great ways. And if you're using the same size paper, it's really easy. I'm not. I'm getting junky. I'm looking through my stash. I'm getting envelopes. You can make a template piece and say, all of my pieces of paper should be this big, and fold them to that size and do it, or trim them to that size. I did these one by one. I looked at them before I cut them because I didn't want swimming in there and backstroke. No, I'll use that on something that both sides don't have to be great. I didn't want to mess up and cut off tips or flips or things where I was going to fold it up to be a pocket. Sometimes if I get in a hurry and I batch cut the whole signature, then things like this, I miss them and I cut them off. So that's part of why I put a Post-it on that said fold it up. And if I have a paper that's not directional and nice and sturdy, those are the papers I like to fold up for horizontal pockets. The right side pockets or tippy flippies, I'm pretty flexible on what the paper is. And I'm just going through my giant, ridiculous stash because many of you have sent me red, white, and blue Happy Mail over the years, or blue Happy Mail, and saying, okay, I want to use this one. I want to use, I can't have two of those because I want to fit one of these in. If I used everything I liked, I wouldn't be able to carry this journal around. That one is a thick one. It's not directional, so I have an idea for that. Your directional papers are more limiting. You can't fold up the other side and have your trees upside down. It's weird. Okay, now I'm going back through. You're going to see, there's an envelope from my mom in there. There's envelopes from my husband, all kinds of stuff. I just don't throw anything away. Mr. Crafting and Relaxing knows if something's on the counter, that doesn't mean he's authorized to throw it away. I didn't like the violetish. There's that color palette of patriotic, but it's like burgundy and violet wasn't working for me. Here, I'm just checking to see, okay, how big can a page be? You can measure, you can do it however you want. And I don't care if they're all exactly the same. It's a junk journal. I'm going to tear edges. In fact, I don't want every page in it to be exactly the same size. It makes it boring. You can't see as much color when you flip through. See, I didn't like that paper. No, not for this. Then I had a piece of paper. It was gold and sheet music on one side. The other side, it was Christmas paper, turns out. So we're going to use that in December daily, probably. Then I ran across this napkin, and I thought maybe I would use it as a signature page, but the pattern wasn't on the whole thing. So I decided to just cut this off and set it aside because it should be in there somewhere for sure. Another envelope. I have a lot of envelopes in these signatures. Just fiddling and looking. Some of this paper, the reason I'm cutting that one down, it had something cut out of it. I didn't have a whole sheet. Okay, all your pages don't have to be the same size. If it's a paper that you love, use it anyway. Okay, now we're getting the idea. I have those big clamps. That's not going to work. We need paper clips so we can stack them up and see. Think about which signature do you want in the front? Which paper do you want to see the most? I have it laid out. We're coming back to it. I was pretty sure I wanted the card in the front, but it was big. I was having a little trouble with it because it's bigger than everything else. So sometimes you don't want your biggest item in front because then you don't get the interest of the layering. So maybe you want to tuck it into the signature and then bits of it will show. Kind of looking at it and saying, okay, which colors do I like together? Which pages? You don't want to end up with something, a bunch of white, and I don't want vintage and bright necessarily on the same page if I can have a page that kind of matches. And some of these papers, you saw that one, it's stenciled on. I don't care. I mean, then I don't have to do it, right? That's from last year. I tried something and then got sidetracked. I'm trying to thin things down, but I don't want to take anything out. Then I find this bin. We're in trouble now. It says, my next journal. Turns out I've been setting stuff aside for like a year. This cover is made with a fabric that's sentimental and close to my heart, but it's a little bit violet. So I probably wouldn't have used it even if I'd remembered it was a UFO in there, unfinished object. Then I pulled it out. I'm checking the size, the color. Nope, I'm sticking with the one I made. Either way, we're going to have a UFO cover, right? I mean, I already made the second one. Oh, maybe look around your room before you make one. Still, it wasn't right for a patriotic album. Then I'm thinking, okay, how do I want to do this? Do I want to cut this now? I definitely need to get off the little branding strips. And you'll see me sometimes use my bone folder to crease things down. It's not that I'm worried about the crease. It's that I'm trying to thin things down. I don't want the bulk. And if you get a really heavy duty paper, you need to take something and crease it besides maybe just your finger. Then I decided, okay, let's measure and write some stuff down because I can't remember. So the highest my pages can be is 7.5 inches tall. And I'm making it so the top will tip. So taking a pair of scissors, this is kind of a thing. I don't know where I got this, but I've just done it in a couple of recent journals. It's not something I've been doing for a long, long time. And then 5 inches wide max. Otherwise, it's going to stick out of the cover. Then I'm just folding it into the shape I want it to be. I'm going to trim it to its width and then put it back in its signature. Once I start fiddling with the sequence of a signature, I want to keep them in the same order because otherwise you've wasted that time. So that's why I'll take them apart, I'll set it off to the side, and if it was a page somewhere mid-signature, I'll set the two parts separate so I know exactly where the page goes back. Maybe it's better if you just don't decide where they're going to go at all until later. Maybe it's faster. I don't know. But I like when it's a journal for me and I know exactly how I want it and I have things in there from different people, I like to mix it up. And I don't want 5 envelopes in a row or 5 paper bags, anything like that. So I'm fiddling, but it's fun fiddling. And I could, maybe should is the word I'm looking for, have been trimming the envelopes and stuff while it's out and loose and handy. I mean, we know that hard rock bag is going to need to be trimmed down. It's sticking out. But sometimes if I get too aggressive making everything just the perfect shape, I miss opportunities later and think, oh, I should have folded that, or this would have been fun with this. So, see, I'm going to make that card fit. It's going to happen. And it is just a hair too big, but we get there and it works. Now we've got the signature figured out and I remembered, oops, got to keep it at 7 inches or 7.5, whatever. There we go. One ready to go in the book. So before you sew them in the book, got to get the size figured out for the height. You don't have to figure out the width of the page because you can tear those later or use scissors, but to some extent it's easier. I don't want to have to tear every single one later. But you have to figure out the height before you sew your signatures in. Absolutely. And you'll see why when you see my template. In this video, I'm actually going to make the template brand new and sew the journal together. It is not a tutorial. In fact, it's a sewing nightmare, but you'll see it. Sorry, it's not the most perfect camera setup, but... Okay, then I'm folding up the page, the one where I marked it to fold up, cutting off the branding strip. I love the stars, the blue stars at the top, so I'm not going to cut any more off there. So then I'm figuring out how much more do I need to fold up that pocket. Then it was too tall. I didn't like it. So we took it off the pocket. So I didn't give up my favorite part of the paper because my absolute favorite is that whole blue wood and then white stars on it. Yes, we should have more of that. So you can think about that. If you love a certain color and there's a flower of that color at the top of the page, trim the other side or trim the bottom. You'll see me do that with journals where there was a bird on the left side of the paper, so I trimmed the right before I folded it in half or something like that. These aren't scrapbooky papers, so we don't have that level of stuff where we're looking for designs, but like this one was embossed, and so I cut off the parts of it that weren't embossed. There's still a little, but I mean, I wasn't going to cut off any of the embossed parts. Okay, getting that signature together, looking at how thick are all 3 of these stacked up? How do they fit in this book? Are we getting close? Okay, the cover. I made the cover in the video. Then I lined the inside of it with a Disneyland map while I was talking. So The Disneyland map was from when we went with our nephews, and it was sentimental to me. And the washi tape strip, that blue and white diamond washi tape, that's because I got it too tight. I didn't lay it flat, and I had to cut it. I just said, that's it, I'm going to cut it. When you're making your journal covers, be sure you do them flat and then fold them. When you put the fabric around the outside, you want to fold up that cardboard so that it allows to fold. If your outside looks perfectly smooth and beautiful, you did it wrong. You need to have those little creases on each side of the fold, because that is what gives the paper or the fabric the room to fold. Here, if I'm making the template, this is so we can sew in the signatures. If you haven't seen me do this before, if you do a one signature journal, you don't necessarily have to do this. For 3, I definitely do. Maybe some people don't. I'm marking the middle. That's where my middle signature goes. Then I'm marking the 2 edges, and I wanted them in from a ways, so I'm folding to the middle. I also put an up arrow so you know that's the top, and you don't get confused later, because yes, I measured, but it's probably not perfect. So you want to be sure that the way you punch the holes is exactly the way you put the book together, not that you try and move them to different signature places or that you turn them upside down. And I did write on the blue piece of paper, the template, that it's for a graham cracker box, and it was for my July daily, because if I want to use it later, then I'll have it. And I have a bunch of graham cracker boxes in my cupboard. Now, I'm using the Gina K tape runner. It's forgiving and has little dots, and you can like rub them off. It's removable. So I wanted it glued on there so it doesn't slip and I can stab all the holes, but I want to be able to lift this up and not damage anything and move it around to other things. And one time I used like 110-pound cardstock to make my template. Don't do that, because in the next section, I'm going to have to fold that a whole bunch really carefully, and thinner is better. 65-pound at the most, probably. This blue paper is actually like copy paper, 20 pound. Now I'm checking to see on the journal cover, the way I have this template marked and the pages, is it going to lay in the book right? Sometimes when I do multi-signature, especially when I was first doing them, one of my signatures would stick out the top of the book. That was probably because I wasn't labeling the up arrow when I was putting things together. I'm using embroidery floss because I want blue. 3 lengths of it. Always thread your needle before you start getting everything exactly how you want it, because you don't have enough hands. Waxed linen thread is the easiest to use. It is a special order item. It probably doesn't just live in your house. So I used embroidery floss for, I don't know, the first 20 journals I made at least. I have waxed linen thread now, but it's not blue. I mean, I have black, but come on. We need blue. This is why you don't use 110-pound cardstock, because right now I'm getting that blue one folded into the wedge of all these pieces of paper, and it's harder if the template is too thick. Then it fights you and it won't go down in the crack, and you want it to go down in the crack or you won't get right on the fold. You don't want to be off to the left or the right. You want to be right there. Now, I was going to sew that in, and then I remembered one time I watched a video and the person said, I like to start sewing in the signatures from the back of the journal. I don't know why. Maybe it gives us more room. Maybe it's easier. I don't know. Maybe she was left-handed and I shouldn't do it the way she does. I don't even remember. But so I stopped. Seemed like a good idea. So then I grabbed the back one. And the point is, whatever row of holes you use from this folded blue piece of paper, that is the row that you need to sew it into the journal on. So this is the 3rd signature. So when you do a 6 signature book, get yourself a whole bunch of Post-its or something, and be sure you keep those papers, those signature groupings labeled, so you know which side is up and which number signature it is in the book. This is number 3. I'm going to sew it into number 3 slot before we lose track of it. And I do have a beginning journal series that walks you through the steps of the sequence and sewing and how it works. The problem with embroidery floss is when you go in that middle hole, you do not want to go through your floss. This first one was perfect. I mean, I could have done a tutorial using this. The next one and the next one are a nightmare, and I'll show you on there. Most of this video is sped up about 3 times. On the second signature, it turns into such a mess, I went to 5 times. But when you go through the hole, you don't want your needle to come out through any of the 6 strands of floss. And when I'm sewing these journals together, I'm using all 6 strands of floss. Do I need them? Probably not, but I'm too lazy to separate them, so I use 6. You could probably use 3 if you were trying to make it go farther. Maybe you were trying to make a whole bunch of journals and you only had a certain amount of floss. Remember, I don't really have rules. Rules in crafting? No. Okay, so you come up right here. When you go through, you don't want to be in your floss from before. And I'll show you why. Okay, it's all perfect. I'm all happy. It's great. I'm going to get ready, tie my knot. And I go to tighten things up. And I can't get things to scoot right. And I'm getting a little tangled. And I can't figure out what's going on. Am I caught? No. And then I realize I've got problems. And I'm stuck in that middle part. So then I start untangling it and realize, yep, I've gone through 1 or 2 of the strands. So I went backwards because I couldn't get it tightened up and my knot because the floss was tangled in itself. The way you do that, and I think I show it in my tutorial better, is if you tape the floss up tight out of your way, it will work better. This piece right here, that tail, you should tape that up. But oh yeah, I've done this before. I can handle it. That's the funny thing about projects like this, right? Just because you've done it before doesn't mean it's easy. Now I'm fighting with the needle and the thread off camera. Sorry about that. There we go. We're going to get that second signature in. And then I flip through the pages to be sure that I don't have any slack. Because one time I got done, I tied the whole knot and I looked and there was like a loopy. So you just want to take a peek and be sure. It's 3 lengths every time. That's what I'm using. That's plenty. You might want 4 if you wanted like big danglies or something. And I'm going in from the inside because I want the spine to be more of a clean look. I don't have a lot of experience with beadwork and attaching things, and sometimes I want the strings to hang. Look, I can't get back in there. I'm like fighting it. When you have a journal that is made out of all the same kind of paper and the papers behave the same, it's a little easier. When you have these junky journals where one piece of paper is falling apart and the other piece of paper is fighting you, and then one time I tried to use a piece of laminated vinyl, it is sometimes hard to get them sewn together, but you can do it. Just stick with it. If you have to, do it one piece at a time, which is pretty much what I'm doing. And part of the reason it's hard for you to see is because my camera mount is right overhead, so I can't see. So sometimes only one of us gets to look. There we go. Now, I would recommend that you use a needle nest or something, not just lay your needle on the counter, but, you know, I'm not going to do that. Now, here we go. And I'm tangled again. See it? I'm caught between the threads in that top part. And I'm like, I took the last one apart. Are we going to do this again? No, we're not. I am able to just jiggle it a little, and then I say, okay, that's exactly where the knot needs to be. It's probably tight enough. We're fine. Feel it on the outside. Yep, we can pull this off. So I didn't take it apart and redo it because I was a little frustrated at this point. Some things in crafting are super, super fun, and other things you just do so you can have the next step, right? Sewing the journal together, that part did not really bring me joy. I mean, I'm impressed at the end that it worked. Okay, see how it's sloppy? That's exactly how I want it. So there's room for giant embellishments. And then I checked my corners and thought, okay, let's touch those up a little. I don't mind that they're a little frayed, but they probably wouldn't wear very well over time. They were too loose for, the first day of the journal existing. Okay, now I'm going to start tearing things down. If you cut them all perfect and then put the journal together, things sometimes shift or they layer differently, or maybe you tightened one signature, that punch might be getting tired. So it's fine to do it like this, as long as you don't mind torn pages or if you cut a little crooked. I don't care if my page cuts are straight. I just want them to be within the journal cover. I don't mind if lace sticks out, but I don't want my pages to stick out of my cover. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The shelf I'm going to put it on is like 1.5 feet deep. There's plenty of room. But part of it is if it does that, you can't see anything else. You can't see the layers when you open it up and all the scrumptiousness. And I don't have a rocket science method to tear. I don't care which way I'm facing. I just don't. Oh, I really can't tear left-handed, and I should have cut that off. It was a branding strip. I just missed it. And here, the pages lay different when you hold the journal up and close it than when it's open. So that's why a couple of them I have to redo them to get them right, and why I keep opening and closing the journal. It's also really good the day you make the cover before you put the signatures in. And I did, but I did it off camera. Open that journal, close it, lay it flat, let something dry on it. Be sure that it has room. A couple of my earlier journals, maybe even the motorcycle journal, they don't open as well. They're not like art journal flat, but I mean, you can journal in them. And that's because I was learning and I thought having a smooth cover was the right way to do it. No, you want to glue part of your cover, then fold the side up and then put the rest of your fabric on. It just gets too tight and it can't quite work. Okay, so I keep shutting it to look and say, okay, do I like it? There we go. That's the look I like, where all those pages are layered and some are torn and some are straight. And when you open up your journal, you will see there's a lot of variety. That was just too big for me. No measurement, no experience, just meh. Then this one, I decided 2 of the exact same thing. I didn't need that, and I wasn't willing to give up the space for it. I mean, I'll give up a lot of space if something's amazing, but that just I didn't think I needed to. If the paper had been dark blue, my answer might be different. So I'm just checking them. Okay, I need to trim the hard rock bag. I start cutting this and then I realize it says made in the US on it. So I sort of cut around that. Otherwise, I probably would have taken off that bottom messy part, but I just decided to leave it. I checked it to see if any part needed to be glued down. Here I'm checking to be sure that her name doesn't show too much information, but it just says Barb, so that's fine. When I use stuff that you guys sent me, I don't want to show your address or anything like that. This red envelope was from a Christmas card, so that part I just tore off was like a forest green, not a navy blue. We can't have that. And then I didn't like it with that chunk on, so I decided to trim it down. And then I thought it would be fun to glue it onto that white page because it needed a little something. You also can use little red flaps or little flaps like that to staple or glue stuff to. I could have made a whole entire page out of that. And I don't know, maybe I should have. But I thought that was fun too. Whatever you want to do. You could do that, have little flaps like that multiple times in a journal and do each one of them different. This is how I do my pockets now. I think I used to sew them together before I did the signature. It's a little harder in the chunky book, but I don't know. I just feel like they come out better and straighter because sometimes you sew it and it gets a little tweaked when you're sewing. I don't know if that's true. Cutting the bag so it's a pocket and it works. Probably should have cut that envelope also. Same thing here. I don't like how that bag is torn on that side, so I'm just cutting that off. Then, since my circle punch didn't work very well on the last one, it struggles a little with thinner paper. I went to get this scallop punch. This is newer to my stash, but it seems to work every single time, regardless of the paper. So here's the other side of that. We're just gluing it down. And you don't need a lot of glue. And the less you use, the less you have to clean up when it squishes out. And that's it. That's the back of the journal. So except for the fact that I didn't think to trim all the envelopes, and I didn't trim them because I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to use them yet. You can trim them or not trim them in different ways and use them differently. Then I decided, let's ink it up a little. My goal for this journal is to prep it and then have fun with it, not be looking for supplies and scrounging around. And a Disneyland map in the middle of my July daily. Well, I went to Disneyland in August. So it made sense for summer, and I like it, and it brings me joy. My husband says I'm like the only person who gets the map and marks everything when we go to Disneyland. The funny thing is I cut off the side where I was like, oh, this ride was closed and we did this one. But I like the maps everywhere. This is where I messed up. See, I forgot I hadn't trimmed that envelope. So I'm going to come back later and cut off that outside edge. That's okay. I'll show this decorated journal in my Joy of Blue video this month. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.